You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right. Welcome back to Public Comment. And this is a very special public comment because we are introducing a lot of the candidates that are running for mayor. Well, at least right now, they've started a lot of their committees to run for mayor. I'm Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different, joined by the person that really anchors a whole lot of the blueprint of what this will be. And that is Malachi Barrett of Bridge Detroit with his notebook every week covering municipal politics. And we cover municipal politics here on Public Comment from that. Malachi, how are you today?
Doing well. Good morning. We got 5 candidates who have stepped forward to become the next mayor of Detroit. Although they have formed exploratory committees that allow them to fundraise, nobody has officially said, yes, I'm running for mayor. That's going to happen. There's events that are actually scheduled in the next probably 2 months here where people are going to make their big splashy announcements. But in the meantime, they have been meeting with donors, meeting with supporters, even holding some fundraisers in some cases, to start putting together a war chest to run for mayor, not governor. So in my city council notebook, which comes out every Wednesday, it's free. You can subscribe on bridgedetroit.com. This week I looked at who is starting to fund the various candidates and what that kind of means about some of their associations and trying to pull some insights from that. So got a lot of time left in this race. People are not going to vote in the primary even until August of next year. But it's exciting. We've got some people who are going to start kind of creating a space for conversations about what the future of the city should look like.
Yeah, and with that, we definitely gonna jump into what we're doing in public comment today that covers a whole lot of that. So y'all see the beautiful picture from Malachi that we took into everything of the city of Detroit. So let's jump right on into everything that we need to know when we change. Also, the staff departments, we got to think of budget, planning and development, finance, human resources, building and safety, and so much more. Obviously, public works, police and fire. Police, obviously, that's big. Transportation, recreation, water and sewage, and the Department of Neighborhoods. Also, you got to think about this, and it's even more than this: appointing 65 residents in advisory roles through commissions and divisions. So if you don't know this, a commission has executive action, different than a task force, which is associated with city council. That executive action means basically you have access to a budget to execute things. And when we think about new commissions, you already know the renters commission is going to be underway of this new mayor that's going to be in that position, and many, many other things. This is a very executive-led city. So with that being said, we're going to introduce you to Mary Sheffield, City Council President, and somebody that a lot of talk is going into running for mayor, being right there in this campaign season. So Mary Sheffield's background: 37, made history as the youngest person ever elected to Detroit City Council at 26, and now is the president and represents District 5. So District 5 is downtown and also parts of the west side. So you got to think about like some of that Dexter Linwood corridor, but I would say New Center, Zone 8, Northwestern High School, shout out Mighty Mighty Colts, and many more. And Sheffield has definitely involved so much with a lot of community engagement. I definitely think of a lot of the initiatives that Sheffield has connected to, but also been from District 5 connected to a lot of the businesses of a lot of the development downtown. With that being said, the overview right now of what are you hearing from different people that when presented the whole concept of Mary Sheffield and her stance for mayor, and then I can give a little bit of what I'm hearing, because a lot of people are already thinking that Mary Sheffield is going to be one of those tough candidates, especially when they think of the lineage of that family. Her father, but more so her grandfather, started Dabo, and her father continues that legacy of Dabo. So just that organizing, connected to unions, connected to a lot of the work, and staying connected to a lot of civil rights. What's the takes of you're hearing about Mary Sheffield?
Yeah, I mean, she comes in as, the front runner, basically. I mean, I think Joe Tate getting into the race threatens that a little bit because he's got a higher profile position. But Mary's been in city government for 10 years now. She's been leading the city council. She's gotten a lot of legislation passed that she will be able to point to. The people's bills, is an agenda that she has been working on for a number of years now, and actually has some accomplishments to point to there. She's interesting. I mean, she's the youngest candidate in this race. She does a lot with youth outreach. You kind of wonder how that could translate into support for her down the line. I mean, I think we just kind of assume that the people that primarily vote in these elections are older Black women. So is there a chance, with a new set of choices in front of you, that we could see improved turnout? Maybe that would help, with Mary reaching out more to younger people. We can, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about the turnout question down the line. But yeah, I would say, in summary, Mary has a lot of relationships in the community. She has a record, a body of work that she can point to make the argument that she's been delivering things for Detroiters. She's kind of balanced the line on subsidizing development, which is a big issue and has really big implications as well when we talk about fundraising, because you kind of need the business community's money, for a big race like this. And some of that money has started to come in from the construction industry. She's a big union supporter. So I think she's got a lot of the tools that make for a successful candidate. We'll see if she can manage not to get in her own way or, make any mistakes. There was her appearance at a Trump-themed party over the weekend has kind of left some folks being like, well, it was weird. Why would you go to that? I mean, she's not a Trump supporter, but just the optics of like going to an outwardly Trump event. I think those kinds of things, she can make sure not to make kind of unforced errors. I think she'll be one of the top candidates in this race.
Yeah, I would say that her work with Occupy the Block and some of the other things that I've seen in community efforts, especially there in District 5, she has a connection to a lot of community. Also, being the city council member, though she does not sit, which makes the reparations task force so unique, because it's the only task force in the city council that doesn't have a city council member on it. But she was the city council member that led and brought the initiative to life for the reparations task force. And I believe that there will be certainly some questions in reference to like that representation and where things stand as that report moves forward. That's one of those things that I believe that will land I believe in the first quarter of 2025, that will speak to a lot of her connection to community and listening to community, and as we've seen, some of those relationships that she's built over time in business and in community will present a formidable present something formidable. Also, another former city council president, Saunteel Jenkins, that is the CEO of Thaw. When we think of and her time in council was always looking to really organize a lot of different people together, and look at executing things like that. One of the biggest questions I think that Saunteel is going to face is, you had a role in public service before, you stepped down and took on another role in public service, but you were an elected public servant. So that's going to be, I think, a big question that Saunteel is going to face in this election. And that time when she was in council, during the time of the bankruptcy, that, rest in peace, my godmother, I still think, like many others, that was an illegal bankruptcy from the state of Michigan. Hence, those relationships with the state of Michigan will be heavy, which we'll get to later on. But I believe that that's going to be a big pressing question for her, as she organizes, and she has a lot of relationships, even outside of the state of Michigan itself, that reach even that show in some of the campaign dollars that have been raised so far. What are you hearing about Saunteel Jenkins thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I think has an interesting kind of balance of experience, because she was on the city council. She was a city council president before Sheffield, and went Jenkins and Brenna Jones and then Mary Sheffield. She was there during the city's bankruptcy, during emergency management. She also left office to go work for a nonprofit. And so you kind of wonder, how is she going to be able to kind of communicate her work on the council while also kind of navigating, the idea that she wasn't there to kind of see through some of that work. But I think Thaw is a, pretty important nonprofit organization. They raise millions of dollars every year to help, to address some of kind of the most immediate needs of low-income residents. So I think she can show people that she's been doing work that, has provided a lot of help for vulnerable residents, which is always, an important thing to signal when you're running for mayor. It also has helped her make some good friends. Maybe she had some of them before, but you look at her campaign donation list, and there's a lot more nonprofit leaders. There's a couple of professors and attorneys and some consultants that are giving to her, which to me, I just would assume that those are people you kind of meet in the philanthropy world. Whereas it seems like Sheffield's money is more so coming from business communities right now. Not to say that Jenkins doesn't have
The business
donations coming in from the
relationships.
business. Yeah, because that is true. But just in terms of like where I see some of the balance, important to note also, these campaign finance disclosures that we're reporting on, for Jenkins, I mean, she only got in the race in like August, I think. So she only has really like 2 or 3 months of fundraising work to show for it. So again, this is all like very early stuff and subject to probably change a lot as she goes out more. Um, but it is interesting to me the amount of money for both of those candidates that's flowing in from outside the city, particularly from Oakland County, from places like Birmingham, from places like, uh, even some Macomb County areas like Sterling Heights, but Bloomfield, Ann Arbor, even there's some money kind of flowing in from Dearborn, from Livonia,
Yeah.
Waterford Township. Some of these kind of more you think of like what the neighborhoods look like in a West Bloomfield,
Well, I'll tell you what the neighborhood looks like. It's not a lot of this in those neighborhoods.
Right.
And it's definitely like when we think of the lens of what we're dealing with in Detroit, this kind of goes into one of the key things that, hence, I'm going to always bring this up. A lot of the root of the illegal bankruptcy from the state of Michigan deals directly with the residency laws in the city of Detroit. So I'm going to bring this back up, and I'm probably going to comb through my archives of Detroit is different because this is what the deal is. At one point in time, if you were a non-resident that worked in the city of Detroit, your taxation on that was 1.5% of whatever your earnings were. That changed under the Archer administration. That was a rule that went back from Coleman Young and even further. I want to say even back to like Mayor Cobo. The reason that changed was because the regional authority agreed that they would come together for some improvements to develop Cobo Hall. And under that guise, the state of Michigan will provide the revenue sharing that was lost in that deal. The state of Michigan, up to this point, has never given that money. And then turned around and said that the city of Detroit owes money to the state of Michigan. The argument led through Joanne Watson, rest in peace, and others in community was that if you honor and pay the money of the debt owed for the non-resident monies, then that would cover the debt of what needs to happen for the city of Detroit to make fair with the state of Michigan, because the state of Michigan owed the city of Detroit, and Michigan felt like the city of Detroit owed Michigan. And in that battle, you all see what happened to quote unquote the bankruptcy, which I believe unfolded so many different things that definitely fed into the even the executive body of Mayor Duggan, and a lot of what Mayor Duggan was faced with in balancing both things. And even this kind of has impacts on Detroit public schools and just the cloud that looms over for Detroit debt, which really I believe is a lot of Michigan debt, dealing with a lot of non-residents that work and make money in the city of Detroit, but are not paying their fair taxation to the city of Detroit. Hence the interest of a lot of these dollars flowing into even people running for office in the city of Detroit. So that's just Detroit is different. Khary Frazier rant as we get into the next candidate here. Fred Durhal, District 7, City of Detroit, City Council member. Another
He's kind of the only candidate so far to really sit down and do a longer interview with me at this point, which it'll happen with the rest of them. But I'm just saying, if you want to learn more about what Durhal is all about, we talked for about an hour, and there's a story up on Bridge Detroit's website that kind of explores some of that conversation. And nobody else has really sat down for that much time yet to really kind of talk through their plans.
What's with that, what stood out in the interview, and also what are you hearing about Fred Durhal? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, what stood out to me in the conversation with him is he continually kind of emphasized the idea that we can grow the neighborhoods in the downtown simultaneously, and that we can kind of build on some of the strategies that were used to build the downtown. We can use those strategies in commercial corridors in neighborhoods throughout the city. So you think of places like Warren Avenue, where they just did a big streetscape project, that's a place where maybe he would try to create some tax benefits to spur development there. So kind of, expanding the DDA into like neighborhood areas was something that he was interested in exploring.
Okay, and if people get an idea of this, the DDA, the tax capture, which we'll break down a lot more of this as time goes, but it captures taxes, and that's something that I personally am adamantly against. But that's me. That is me, because you're battling other things of people already being overassessed for taxes. It's a lot of other discussion points, but I would definitely think that like the Dexter corridor that is open now will be one of those things, and some of the renovations of the Dexter Elmhurst Center, which would now be named in honor of Helen Moore, will be big victories that he's going to wave the flag for, of the ways that he's poured into community. I'm just seeing that. Another candidate that we have, Joe Tate, Michigan Speaker of the House. And I think the big one here is the first Black Speaker of the House for the state of Michigan, which filing the paperwork. And I feel like this can kind of go both ways for Mr. Tate, but a lot of relationships, that are made across the state. When we think about the relationship between the mayor and the state, that's really big, because so much of our charter, so much of our city government, it takes relationships with the state to execute this. I believe that the tough thing about what Joe Tate is actually the strongest thing about Joe Tate. The strongest thing is that he was the Speaker of the House, first Black Speaker of the House. The toughest thing about this will be that a lot of people now are in retrospect saying that under the Democratic leadership, enough was not pushed through. Now, I'm not necessarily one of the people saying that per se. It's hard to even evaluate to look at what this is, but there are a lot of leaders I know in environmental justice, social justice, a lot of people even for tax laws that are saying that the Democratic leadership could have done a lot more, and enough was not done. So I do believe that that's going to be something that he'll be faced with, but it also is kind of the lens of where he looks at the leadership comes from too. What's your take on Joe Tate, and what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, he comes in, he's high-ranking Democrat. I think he has a lot of the same relationships that Jenkins and Sheffield and any other potential frontrunner would want. When it comes to the fundraising, when it comes to the political organization, right? He's got a statewide profile. He's got different union groups and PACs that have been donating. He just ran for re-election in 2024, so he would probably have to leave his term early to become mayor. It's not really that big of a deal, but something to think about. But basically, I'm saying that he's got a lot of the resources that some of these candidates are more behind on. His name recognition is probably a little bit higher, although it's kind of hard to judge that. I mean, I would just assume that because of his high-ranking position, but his district that he covers, that he represents in the House, is not that much bigger than a city council district. So people may not know. I mean, it might be comparable.
I would say he is definitely known in political circles to raise funds. As far as like day to day, like at the barbershop, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
A lot of these candidates are going to have to define themselves. Like, what are they about? What do they stand for? I mean, Joe Tate has been largely trying to advance the Democratic Party's agenda when it comes to bills and legislation at the Capitol, which there are some local Detroit folks that have been upset with the lack of progress on things that some Detroiters would want to see. So maybe that could come back to kind of bite him a little bit.
That right there is going to be the tough thing about it. That will be the tough thing about it. So Joel Haashiim, businessman, and he is the candidate that definitely is standing against a lot of the tax abatements given to a lot of the businesses. In 2021, he submitted a bid that wasn't necessarily going through, like that ended up in write-in campaign, but definitely looking to be in the interest of no tax dollars from the city of Detroit going to any of the business developments, which definitely stands as one of those key discussion points in a lot of the social advocacy and social activism throughout the community of the city of Detroit. His stance is a lot of that money needs to go into schools. You've had a conversation with him before, and you've connected to him. I have not met him as of yet, and I'm looking forward to seeing how even just that talking point about the role of government dollars continuing to go into public developments, what that looks like, which is like completely juxtaposed to what you just said. Like Fred Durhal believes that more public dollars can be partnered with private interests to empower communities. What's your stance from Mr. Haashiim?
Yeah, he seems like a smart guy. He's got a lot of experience. He's the oldest candidate in the race. He has experience as attending international trade delegations, he tells me, which I'm not really sure the breadth of his business experience, but that's interesting. That's experience that I don't think anybody else really has on the ticket. I could see he describes himself as a progressive candidate. I could see him being, probably having the most progressive like vision in this race, although I think Saunteel and Mary Sheffield will probably try to posit themselves as, being progressive voices as well. But Joel is embracing some of the things that some of the louder folks have been advocating for. I guess when I say that, I mean like People's Platform, the Traders for Tax Justice.
Yeah.
He's openly saying, yeah, maybe we should, or he's saying openly, we should end tax abatements. He thinks that they are devaluing the education system in Detroit. He's talked about creating a public bank. He's talked about issues with the land bank. So I think he could probably take on some of these things that some kind of grassroots voices have been looking for. We'll see what his organizing capabilities are. He hasn't posted any fundraising activity at all, despite being in the race for about a year now. And he gave some of his own money to fund his campaign. So does he have people behind him is kind of the question for me at this point.
I would say that
there's time for that.
I would say that if you're against tax abatements, you're definitely going to have to put a lot of your own money up and a lot of grassroots organizing, as we can definitely see the relationship between raising a lot more campaign funds, usually tied to a lot of business interests that are doing business with the city of Detroit. This is just this is 2 + 2 = 4. And it's not just the city of Detroit, it's the state of Michigan. It is just how politics happen. But I am a firm believer that there are ways for grassroots campaigns to execute, because in reality, the money itself, if we can learn this, let's see, back to Khary soapbox. The money itself is to inspire people. The best way to get people is the boots on the ground. The boots on the ground, those real volunteers, the people that go out, knock doors, engage, talk to people, turn over those stones in the salons, the barber shops, really have those real discussions and be fair with people about what's reasonable and what could change, and also inspire people to learn a little bit more about the process. So here at Public Comment, like we say, we're going to have a lot to talk about up till, August is when the primary happens. So we're going to look to inspire here through Public Comment, Bridge Detroit, and more through Detroit is Different, of showing you a little bit about the roles and what the expectations are, because it's a lot of voter apathy, which I plan on actually bringing in a couple different people. Probably it's time to get Daniel Baxter in here or something to talk about the apathy that does exist. With that, Detroit is Different. Thank you so much for checking out Public Comment. Malachi, tell them peace.
BridgeDetroit.com. Come find our stuff. It's all free. It's online. The notebook dives into this in a lot more detail. There's a fun map you can explore to see where some of the money is coming from. And yeah, we're going to have a lot more conversations about this. So stick with us. Thanks for tuning in.
You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. the live stream. Detroit is Different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.